idea where the story is going until it gets there. One of the criticisms about this book Hi friends, I just wanted to come on here today and tell you about the books that I read in March. I had a really good reading month in that the books that I read were really good quality reading, but I didn't read a lot. I think I finished about 6 books, and I'm going to tell you about them today. So the first book that I finished was a real pleasure. I said it was a 5-star rating when I finished reading it. A month later, I'm not sure if it's still a 5-star rating, but I really enjoyed reading this book. This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith is one of those books where you're not sure what you're reading and you have no idea where the story is going until it gets there. One of the criticisms about this book on Goodreads is that they don't, the reader, the person who wrote the review, said they didn't know what genre the book was supposed to be in, and I really like that about it. I admired the fact that I had no idea whether this was going to be horror or romance or just literary fiction, and it was enjoyable. It was an enjoyable mystery. That's the book you want to, but we haven't read those books yet. That's for next time, okay? TBR. That's the TBR for next month. So, This Close to Okay. Brief synopsis. We have a main character who's a black woman, and she's a therapist. She's on her way over a bridge one night. It's raining, and she sees a man looks like he's about to jump. And so she stops her car and tries to talk him off the bridge, literally and figuratively. She decides to spend the weekend with him just to kind of help him process whatever it is that he's going through, what pushed him to that point where he was contemplating suicide. And she's not very open with him in that she never tells him that she's a therapist, because she doesn't want him to feel like he's a case study or something like that. And so over the course of the weekend that they spent together, she's keeping secrets from him while she's telling him a lot about herself, and he is eventually revealing little snippets of his life, but he's also being secretive about some things. And it's really interesting because you're reading from mostly her perspective, but a little bit from his. And so you're seeing their thought process as they kind of think about the secrets that they're keeping and how they're delving into each other's lives and making a mess of each other's lives in short. But I really, really like this. I thought that the author gave us characters who we wanted to root for. And whether they end up together, whether their relationship blossoms into a friendship or a romance, I feel like it's not, like, you don't need to know whether that happens. You just see people showing someone else who they are, away from maybe how they would reveal themselves to other people. It's that thing where they say you can be open with strangers in a way you can't with your friends or family. I felt like that really came through in this book. And the author gave us a lot of literary elements, a lot of literary links that made this such a treat to read. There were lots of, like, the conversation between these two characters, their banter, their wit, their smarts, their funnies, just the things that they talk about and how they relate to each other was just a treat to read. I felt like this was a really beautiful experience to read. I read this, I think, in about 2 days, and I loved it. Highly recommend it. This was a giveaway win on Instagram. So This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith is a new release. And did I mention this is taking place in Kentucky? If you are attempting to maybe read a book from every state, this is a great way to get in a state that you probably don't often read from. I don't think I've read anything that was set in Kentucky in a really long time. I really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend this one. This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith, and that is the author right there. And I felt like I was picturing the author as the main character while I was reading, even though the cover has her looking completely different. And this male main character, he is, like, I think he is maybe white appearance, white passing. He's really light-skinned, but they're both black characters. So I really enjoyed that. That was the first thing that I read in March, and I didn't read anything else for a long time. It stopped again? Okay. Let me turn it back on for you. So after I was finished with This Close to Okay, I didn't read anything else for several days because I wasn't sure how to follow that up. I eventually picked up an arc that I'd gotten from the publisher. This is When Stars Rain Down by Angela Jackson Brown. This is an arc, and it's interesting because when I picked up this cover, I thought about a little discussion that I'd seen being had on the internet a year or two ago, where people are talking about how there's a tendency for when books feature black main characters on the front, they don't show a face, they show silhouettes or caricatures, and that's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. But for now, we'll focus on this book, When Stars Rain Down by Angela Jackson Brown. This was also a really interesting read. I'm going to be reviewing this one on my blog in April, but I had it on my shelves and I just wanted to pick it up. So this is also set in another state that maybe you don't read from all the time. This is set in Georgia, but not in Atlanta. This is set in Parsons, Georgia, and it's historical fiction. It's set in 1936. We're reading from the perspective of an 18-year-old girl on the brink of womanhood, or I think she's not quite 18, she's 17, but she's living almost an adult life. Her parents are not present, and she's been raised by her grandmother, and together she's been working with her grandmother as a domestic worker in the home of a white family. And this is a home where her grandmother has been working since her mother was growing up. So these white people are like her family, but not, because, you know, there's still the race class divide. And because this is the 1930s, there is a lot of description of Jim Crow activity, and there is Ku Klux Klan activity as well. So in here, we see a friendship that this young girl has with the white boy in the family, and how the people in the community, the white people in the community, would react to that. But we also have her burgeoning romance with a black boy, and what that looks like, how people react to that as well. What I really enjoyed about this book was how this main character, this young woman, talked about herself. She had a very strong self-identity. She knew that she didn't want to pursue academic opportunities. She knew that what she really liked to do was cook and bake. She wanted, she liked being a homemaker. And other people kind of looked down on her for that because they thought that she wasn't ambitious enough. But this was what she wanted to do. And I couldn't help thinking how different opportunities are between the 1930s and the 2010s, 2020s. That a young girl in this time wanting to pursue domestic arts, there are so many opportunities to do so. But back then, really the only hope for her would be to work as a domestic helper in someone's home. But I like that. I like how the author portrayed the main character and her friendship with her family members. She has a cousin who she's pretty close to, and how the adults in her family start learning how to treat her as an adult as well. There is some trauma in this book. There's a lot of trauma. Like, I feel like more trauma porn. This is one of those books where a lot of negative things happen to this main character, but she survives, she thrives through it all. And so I really like that. I enjoy how the author centers this environment, this 1930s Georgia in the south of the United States environment. And so yeah, highly recommend this one. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about it in a blog review coming up soon. So aside from that, I read two books for the Run Right Reads book club. We were reading Puerto Rico in March. So I read The Taste of Sugar by Maricel Vera and The House on the Lagoon by Rosario Ferry. And I'm going to be making a separate review video where I talk about those two books. We had a wonderful two-part discussion about the books from Puerto Rico with the Run Right Reads book club. We meet on the last Sunday. Well, we usually meet on the last Sunday of the month on Zoom to discuss the books. In March, we had to move things by a week because there was just so much happening. And then the first time we met, it was Easter Sunday. And so some people who wanted to join were not able to join. So we ended up having a part 2 to the discussion the next week. And it was wonderful. I really enjoyed both books and I really enjoyed talking about them. So I'm going to be making a separate video where I talk a little bit more about them. But this one is set in Puerto Rico around the time of the Spanish-American War. And we see the different ideas that Puerto Ricans have about their political involvement and their relationship with the United States. There is a lot of history in here. There's a lot of discussion about whether Puerto Rico should be independent or whether they should be linked to the United States as one of the states. And there is the fallout of how the United States treats Puerto Rico after Puerto Rico has gotten involved in fighting the wars, but when they need help from the United States, how they're treated and how the people in the country react to that treatment. This is fantastic, and I'm going to be talking more about that in the video, like I said, so look out for my review video. The House on the Lagoon was also excellent. In this one, we have a woman who's writing about her family history, but specifically her husband's family, her husband's ancestors. She's living in this house that his family had built, and she writes about the history of the house. A lot of the people who lived in the house, but also the people who entered their lives because of this house. The man who was the architect for the home, and family members in the family tree, but her husband's family tree. And so she's writing about this history, and then we have these little places where her husband is reading her manuscript and speaking directly to the reader and letting us know that there are gaps in the history, like there are falsehoods, there are novelizations, and so, you know, his life didn't really go like this. And I love that as a literary element. I'm going to be talking more about that in the review video. And of course, in that book, there's also a lot of discussion about whether Puerto Rico should be a state, a commonwealth, or an independent. And so there's a lot of political discussion about the future of Puerto Rico. And I loved both books. It was such a treat to read Puerto Rico as a Caribbean country, you know. Loved it. So more on that later. If you are interested in joining the Run Write Reads book club, it is an open book club. All you have to do to join is to read the books each month. And so every month we choose 2 books, and we choose 2 novels from a country or a region in the Caribbean, and we read them and talk about the country, how the country is portrayed by these 2 different authors. So join the Run Write Reads book club if you like. In April, we are reading Trinidad. We're reading Golden Child by Claire Adam and The Wine of Astonishment by Earl Lovelace. Links in the description box down below if you want to check out more about that. So that was all the physical books that I had. I also read The Black Cabinet by Jill Watts. I did a buddy read of that one with Patrice and Heidi and Doris, and we had started reading that in February. We didn't get very far in February, but we completed it in March, and it was a wonderful read. I learned a lot about history. So the Black Cabinet refers to the black people who were working in federal positions in the White House or in the administration during FDR's presidency. Most of the book focuses on events that happened during FDR's first term and the bid to get FDR reelected, the New Deal and how it affected African Americans during that time, and how much the second and third term of FDR's presidency was due to the black vote. So the main character in this book is definitely Mary Macleod Bethune. She's like the heroine of this period and a strong black woman, and she was a strong force in this period. And I love that the author Jill Watts really centers on her contribution, and there were pictures, and it just made me even more appreciative of how strong a woman had to have been in the 1930s and 1940s in order to get the kind of in order to accomplish the kinds of things that she did. It talks about her relationship with Eleanor Roosevelt and how together these women impacted the presidency, how Mary Macleod Bethune worked to assure black support for FDR's presidency. It talks about the other men who had jobs in the government, the other black men, and what it was like for them on a day-to-day basis to work in this regard. I love this book. I love this book. I read a free copy from my library, but it's one of those books that I'd love to own, have on my shelves that I could refer to and point other people to. So I might be getting a copy of that at some point. So yeah, I think that's all I read in March. It wasn't that much, but I had a wonderful reading month because all those books I read, I really enjoyed. So thank you so much for watching this video. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you read in March. What was the best book that you read? What was the best thing that you read in March? And what you're looking forward to reading in April, that will top it. So thank you so much for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let's chat in the comments. And until next time, happy reading. Bye. Things that happened.